Hello and welcome to the second episode of Inside the Majors podcast, presented by Kinetic Racing. I'm your host, Wade Hayes. Joining me today, wearing his competition committee hat, is John King. A bit later in the show, we'll be joined by Riley Thompson from Total Downforce Racing. Our show comes to you today from Eldora Speedway, a half-mile dirt oval in Ohio, often called the greatest dirt track in the world. The track is owned by driver and team owner Tony Stewart. Well, welcome to the booth, John. As we get started here, who should we watch for in this session, or who or what, really?
Yeah, this one is really hard to say because there's a bunch of people that have registered for the series, for the race, that just haven't run laps or haven't done qualifying. The big name that we want to watch out for is Blake Reynolds, because Blake hasn't done many practice laps. He hasn't done a queue, so hopefully he'll turn up in this session. Everybody else, I don't know. We'll just have to see who shows up.
So speaking of that, what do the splits look like as far as Americas and Europe?
Well, Europe is easy. Europe's going to be one split. There really hasn't been very many entries at all. I think there's even less in Europe than there was in international. America's going to be two splits, so there'll be 48 in one and an unspecified number in the second, depending on who's around.
Sure. So speaking of international, you guys ran yesterday or last night. How did that go? You were in that race.
Yes.
You were kind of in that race, right?
Yeah, it was interesting. The way the track is this year is really, really tough, and I think that's part of the reason why we've had such few entries. And I couldn't get my head around it at all. I was really good on a nice fresh track, but once the track started to degrade, I was absolutely hopeless. So my only chance was to get through the heats, and I got wrecked before turn one in my heat. So I had zero chance, and I was pathetic in the consolation race. So, but the race seemed to go okay. We had a fair number of cautions. I think 6 cautions during the race in the feature, but it was pretty tough racing out front. We all expected Cam Dons to win, but James Robbie held him off. So it was. I think it was a good race for the top 5 or 6. But I think a little bit like Europe and maybe even Americas is going to be. There's some guys that are good, and then there's a whole bunch of guys that really aren't very good at all.
So did fields invert in the international region?
Yeah, and that's what happens in real life. But I think in real life it's because there's a gazillion people that enter and a whole bunch of heats. Whereas certainly in international, I think some people gamed it and set a qualifying lap to make sure they're on the first couple on the grid in the heats. So I'm not sure it worked particularly well. But I think Mike's going to stick with it for Europe and Americas.
Yeah, it should make things interesting for sure. Let's see. So in the last episode, Mike was talking about, or you and Mike both talked about predictions around top 3 drivers, top 3 teams in each region. Any chance those are going the way you thought they would?
Yeah, I certainly from the teams, I don't think things have changed very much. I was a bit gloomy about Kinetic's chances in Americas before the last round, and that proved to be pretty prophetic. We didn't do great in international and in Americas. We did okay, and we've maintained our place, but we didn't do particularly well. So I don't think the teams the teams have changed very much. Certainly, Alliance look really strong in Americas, and the two kinetic teams in international and Europe. In the drivers, again, not too many changes. I think Blake increasingly is struggling because of his commitments in peak, um, to do the practice laps and get motivated. So I think Matt Thunhorst looks real strong in Americas, and we'll see tomorrow. If Blake doesn't turn up, of course, that gives Matt a huge boost. Um, in Europe, Christian has pretty much got it sewn up, and he looks really strong again this weekend. And international, same with Cam Dance. He looks super strong. Um, the Mike talked a little bit about a fight for the podium places in international, and Dean Mole and I were both really in that fight, but we've both had two disastrous rounds now, so we've pretty much dropped out of it. So I think it's pretty much down to Cam now.
So looking forward to the races tomorrow. Who? I mean, this is a bit outside the norm, certainly for the kinetic guys I know, and I suspect for a lot of the league. Who should we be looking for?
Um, I think let's deal with Europe first because that's probably the easy one. Um, Christian. Christian says he's no good at dirt, and yet he's like 2/10 faster than everybody else. So I don't think it'll be any great surprise if Christian wins. Um, the interesting person in Europe is Nick Skeets. He's actually a kinetic ringer, and he's the one person on our team that is basically a dirt specialist. And Nick made a really last minute decision to run. He normally races midgets and wingless cars, but obviously he understands dirt. So he jumped in last night and ran laps, and he did a really good qualifying lap. So he's second fastest to Christian. I think he might be a threat. Riley, who we'll talk to in a sec, looks pretty good as well. But I think in Europe, Christian, unless Christian makes a mistake or something happens to him, I think Christian will be really, really hard to beat. But we'll see. America's, who knows? Tucker Minter was unbelievably fast in qualifying. So the riding shotgun guys have obviously got a set hooked up for qualifying, which means that they probably will run well in the feature. Because the track state in qualifying was fairly bad. Apart from that, I think it's going to be a bit random. I'm surprised actually that there doesn't appear to be that many ringers in America. So we'll just have to see. I think it's going to be mostly the guys that we know, but probably in a different order to normal.
So speaking of the guys that we know, we see all the normal names and faces in the pro splits that get broadcast, but there are other splits and there are other guys that are out there that probably deserve a bit of praise or at least say their name and tell a little bit about what we know about them. Uh, Anybody to look for in the sportsman splits?
Um, yeah, well, there's only going to be sportsmen in Americas, of course, and there's going to be a few guys that we'd normally expect to be in the top split of races. So like Wayne Hutchison is right on the bubble. Dick Muller as well. Both of those are regular top split guys, and Scott Corbin as well from Kinetic. Those three are right on the bubble of the top split at the moment. So they may well end up being in the sportsman split. And of course their racecraft is pretty good, so you'd expect them to run well. But yeah, it's really hard to tell. This race is so unpredictable because it's it's outside everyone's comfort. It's outside most people's comfort zone, um, and it's also really really tough to tell from practice and qualifying how people will actually run in the races.
Sure. Yeah. So one of the things that was changed this year, and maybe you can talk a little bit about in years past, not making the pro split was a huge hit. Your chance to making any points in the round. Talk a little bit about how the overlap works and how maybe it's not the absolute worst thing to be on that bubble.
Yeah. What we had last year was a completely linear point system. So if you if there were 50 people in the top split and 50 people in the sportsman split, the winner of the sportsman split got 51st place. Um, what we wanted to do this year was to try and award people a little bit more for the sportsman split. So we've got an overlap of, and it slightly depends on whether it's a multi-class race and how many entries there are, but somewhere around 9 places. So in that example that I gave, the winner of the sportsman split would get 42nd place if my arithmetic is right. So it helps the guys that don't qualify particularly well, but have got good racecraft, um, and just lowers the stress level a little bit for when the race is split. And personally, I think that it's worked pretty well.
Yeah, for sure. So
The
on
the
on to
other
some.
the other big point, the other big change we made on the points while we're talking about it is we've also we're also punishing guys now for not finishing races much more than we did before. So you have to complete, I can't remember the exact number, either 75 or I think it's 80% of the race distance to be classified as a finisher. If you're not, then you get basically the bottom points of the next split. So, in that example that I gave, if you're in a 50 car split with a 50 car sportsman split, and you don't finish, you're going to get something like 90th points place. So it just gives people an incentive to try and finish.
Sure. Yeah, keep it
Um,
clean. Keep it clean and finish the race.
Yeah, and of course, I suffered from that big time at Spa because of the technical problems that I had. Um, I ended up being a non-classified or a non-finisher in the top split, and I got a pathetically small number of points because of that.
Drop round.
Which is cool.
Yeah.
It's not. I'm not complaining about it. It's when you have a disconnect on lap 2 and then iRacing gives you a permanent meatball, there's not much you can do about it. So too bad.
Yeah. Catastrophic failure. So on to some just kind of broader stuff. I know that you've started work on the 24th Le Mans that will happen later this year. Is there anything that you can share?
Yeah, I can. But before we do that, why don't we ask Riley about how he's seen this week and what he's looking forward to in the Europe race.
Yeah, absolutely. Welcome to the booth, Riley.
Hey guys.
So what are you seeing this week? How are you feeling about it? How's your team doing?
Honestly, personally for me, I'm kind of scared to see how it'll be, especially in a slick track and sprint cars. You never know how the car will react. I think the team itself, though, is kind of half and half. Some of them are feeling good about it. Others, I think, are kind of feeling how I feel.
Yeah, I know we have at Kinetic. We're probably more on the get to Michigan train, but as far as practice sessions and qualifying sessions, what have you seen out there? Have you seen guys doing the right things to get ready?
Yeah, I think the main thing is just practicing in the slick here. The feature from the international race seemed pretty slick. So just trying to get used to that is really the only thing that you can do if you want to make it to the end.
So tell us a little bit about TDR. How are you structured? Where do you guys come from? How does that all work for you?
The way we're kind of structured right now, we'd kind of like it to be a little bit more structured in the future, I think. Everyone kind of does their own thing. So kind of like we've got Dakota leading us off in this, where he's specializing in it. Road stuff, we may have a few other guys specializing in it. So it's mainly whoever knows the most. We'll just have them lead us off and then follow in their direction, hopefully.
So is TDR basically just a majors team, or excuse me, do you do other things across iRacing?
We're trying to expand more into racing. We started off just in official racing, and I think we're trying to focus a little bit more on majors now. But overall, we're trying to get to as many places across racing as we can.
Sure. How did you guys come together? I mean, are you did you know in real life, or you just raced against each other? What's that story?
Basically, a couple of us just watched Twitch streams. We knew each other, and we're just like, "Hey, let's start a team." We started that, and then so I think it's about 2 years down the line now, and we're here.
And you guys you're not just in the Americas, right? You race in other regions as well. Is that right?
Yeah, we're mainly focusing on the European region, and then some of the guys that the time doesn't work as well for, they'll run in the Americas.
Sure. Do you guys have any targets that you've set for the year?
I think mainly we're just trying to prove that we can do something, trying to go for, I think a podium should be a fair shot for us. Right now I think we're kind of tied for fourth, so starting to get that and then just shooting for the podium, and I think I'll consider it a pretty good year.
Yeah, that's great. Uh, Looking forward on the calendar, are there rounds that you're really excited for, and the other side, anything that you're dreading?
Honestly, I'm really happy for Michigan for the next round. I think we're gonna have a really good set going for that, really good group driving it too. So on the other hand, I think like F1, that'll be interesting because no one really drives it anymore. But at the same time, we haven't really driven it. A lot of us are newer on our racing too. So that'll be interesting. And then you've got the Lotus race that it'll probably just be kind of like this, where it'll be half of us like it, other half is like, how do you drive this?
Have you guys started thinking about next year, and you know, will you be back with the majors? What are your plans as far as around the majors and the team in general?
Yeah, I think right now we're kind of figuring out with uh how it'll be going next year. I think we're gonna basically try and put more of our marbles into European and try and draw those America guys over to it and try and maybe even go for the win in that. You never know, because I mean if we can get pretty close to Kinetic, then I think that'll be a really good season for us.
Yeah, for sure. The door, knock on the door right there. I know that you guys have been coming on strong for sure.
Yeah, and you guys have been super unlucky this year. Your your specialist event was is Camel, and you got destroyed there, didn't you,
Yeah.
Riley? So I think you guys are a lot closer than the points make it look.
Yeah, I think as long as we can just make sure we get that commitment, making sure we get at least four guys around instead of just two. Like maybe even this time, I think we only have two, maybe three in Euro. So it'll definitely getting a full group will help a lot, I think.
Yeah, the way the points work, you really need four people in each race, just in case one person has a disaster. To be really, really competitive. We've survived this year in international because most of the teams are small and are running with two and three people each time. But we've really struggled in international this season with the same way. Like we did terribly at Spa because Dean and I both had disasters, and there was only four of us running. Fortunately there were four, so we got two good results and one disaster. But like this round yesterday, there were only three of us running, and only Jake did all right. Dean and I both got knocked out in the consolation race, so our points aren't going to be too great for this one.
Yeah, just making sure you have those guys there will definitely help points a lot, I think.
Yeah. Just just to butt in about that. Have, I can't remember, Riley. Have you guys got a junior team?
Not right now. We really just have enough for factory team or pro team. So, and then I guess you could kind of consider our junior team our America's team. So,
Yeah, that would really help you if you could get to the point where you had a couple of people in a junior team, so that when people can't make rounds, you can move them up to the main team. That in theory, if you've got like if you can get to five in the main team and a couple of people in a junior team, you're always going to have at least four running.
yeah.
Okay, sorry, Wade,
No, that's all right.
I butted in there.
By all means, anything that comes up, jump on in. So, just the majors in general. What's the feeling around the league within your team or you personally? And is there anything that there's a vocal minority that wants something changed? What's your thing that you want changed?
I'd say our whole feeling about it is it's a really great way for us to learn cars, learn racecraft, and learn about competition without having to worry about failure too much. Because I mean, uh, some of the guys that can't run as much, you can get them in it for a couple rounds, and they'll learn a ton from it. So just getting those guys in there definitely, I think, helps the atmosphere for us.
Cool. So one of the things that people may not know, because just the way you handle yourself on the track and on Discord, is you're a fairly young guy. Uh, what's your experience been on iRacing as a young driver? And to expand on that, do you have any like real life aspirations to go drive race cars?
Uh, Experience in our racing, I'd say, I mean, I really haven't had anything else different from, I'd say, an older guy on our racing. Because honestly, I like to think of myself around that age group, or because I don't think of there being like two age groups in our racing when you've got the younger people and then you've got people with 30, 40. When people say like, oh, this person is really young, they did something stupid, it just blame their age. I don't really think of it like that. I like to think of it like if you did something, you've got to own up to it no matter what. You can't just blame it on your age all the time. And so, real life aspirations, honestly, I'd take anything at this point with the Ignite series going on. Uh, we can get like a Legends cars test, so hopefully that may work out. You never know. But especially being around Tennessee, you've only got a few dirt tracks, maybe like two asphalt tracks, and then if I ever want to get into road, we don't have any road courses. So honestly, sim racing is probably where it's going to be at for me.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I'm in the middle of Iowa. There's plenty of dirt. It's not really my thing, and I have a similar thing, right? So I always wanted to drive a race car and just never had the opportunity to do it, and so sim racing fills that gap for me.
Yeah, and the people you meet here, it's honestly feels better than racing sometimes because you can just throw a car around in a practice session with a teammate or someone and just hang out over cars and drive.
Yeah, for sure. So, uh, what do your real life friends think of your sim racing?
I think most of them, a lot of them find it interesting that, especially the prizes that we're getting now, it's like, holy cow, you can actually do this and get this from it. So I think, especially around my age, that's what most of them look at.
Yeah, for
And then
sure.
there's others that will try and actually keep up with what I do. So I find that pretty cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, John, did you have anything else for Riley here?
No, but just to follow on from that last point, I think it's really fascinating what's going to happen with sim racing over the next few years. I've thought for a while now that with the the esports business on television broadcasts and stuff like that is really big now, and to me, sim racing is the perfect thing for broadcasts because it looks just like something real, and people can understand it. Like I watch, where I am, we've got I think 2 channels devoted to esports, which is all the the beat 'em up games, and I don't understand what the hell's going on. Like I don't play those games, and it just looks like a shambles to me. Whereas an iRacing event, it looks just like a real event, and it's very understandable for people. So I think it's going to become big. The other, I was always into go-karting. I raced go-karts for literally decades, and I'm in Asia now, and the Asian guys are still really committed to karting, but all of them struggle. We get really good karters here, um, but because the competition level isn't very big here, they go over to Europe and they get destroyed. Completely destroyed by guys like Max Verstappen that race karts every week, and there were 40 guys in every race, and 35 of them were competitive, and you just learn to really race. Whereas the guys here, they race once a month, and there's 20 carts in a race, and probably only 3 or 4 of them could win. So they just don't learn the racecraft that they do in Europe. And I think iRacing in particular, but any of the racing sports can fix that problem pretty easily. And it's disappointing to me that more people in Asia aren't using it as a tool to learn their craft before they try to do real life racing. But it'll be interesting to see what happens over the next few years.
Yeah, for sure. Certainly, I don't know if you caught last week, NBC Sports broadcast the peak, uh, word I'm looking for, All Star race with on cable. It was awesome, and it was the real life people commenting, the guys that you hear every Sunday, and it was amazing to watch as an iRacer, from my opinion, to see a thing that I do for fun, that a lot of us do for fun, that looked real. It looked real on TV. It had the same graphics package. It was. I can see how that can be the future, a future feeder series.
Yeah, and if you look at all of the guys that are doing both, like Lando and Verstappen are the 2 easy examples because of Spa, but a bunch of particularly the Europe-based road races, a lot of them are on iRacing. Really a lot of them. You know, Mostly not particularly high profile, but if you look at the entry list for series like Blank Pain and compare the entry list to people that are registered on iRacing, there's a lot, really a lot.
Yeah. So speaking of that, I don't know if you want to get into it or not, but you talked about coaching in karting, and we talked about Spa, and we talked about real life racers uh, on iRacing. Anyone in particular you want to talk about that may have had a really good day in Spa?
Yeah, so one of the kids that I used to coach in karting is James Pull. He's I can't even remember how old he is now, 19 or something like that. He's in his first year of racing Blank Pain. Last year he was racing in the Lamborghini Cup in Europe and in Asia, but he's in Lamborghini's Young Driver Development Program, and he's racing Blank Pain for the first time this year. He's racing in the Silver Cup, which is for basically young pros. Um, and him and his 2 teammates won the Silver Cup at the Spa 24, which was a pretty big deal. He's also interesting for his podium celebrations. If people if people want to see how to open a bottle of champagne, James is a real expert on it. Um, he was actually, I think Daniel Ricciardo did it last year a couple of times, where he banged the champagne bottle down on the podium step. James actually invented that. So, and he did it. He did it real cool at Spa. He jumped off the podium and slammed the bottle down on the stage as he landed and started to spray madly. So he's very cool at champagne celebrations. We'll try and we will get James on a future episode of this. We just need to line up with his schedule, which is bizarre, of course. So,
of course, yeah.
But at some point in time, we'll get him in. We'll get him on this to talk about what he does.
Yeah, we just need
And
to
he's
get him
on
in a
iRacing as
kinetic
well.
car. It'll be great.
Yeah. The problem is James is pretty good on iRacing, but he doesn't take it particularly seriously. So he wrecks a lot. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I think that's the main issue with like a lot of real life guys. But I think if more real life guys take it seriously and not just a thing to do in their off time to have fun, I think it'll really go to even more places. Because I remember just hopping into Xfinity's race yesterday, and there's Scott McLaughlin already just hopping in doing qualifying. Like it's crazy all the guys you can find running.
Yeah, James. James used we got James and I racing account when he first went over to Europe to race single seaters just to learn some of the tracks. So he took it fairly seriously for a while, but now he really just does it to fill in between races, and he's got such a big commitment to Lamborghini now. It's actually difficult for him to find the time, and he's also got a bizarre life because his mum and dad live in Singapore, which is why I know them. But he's based in the UK now, of course. But he's still, and he travels around for the races. But he also tries to get back to Singapore whenever he can to see his mum and dad. And so, his schedule is just madness. And he's only got a sim rig in the UK, so he can't do it any other time. But yeah, we'll get him on the show, and we will get him in a kinetic car for something at some point in time.
Maybe Spa next year.
That will be good, yeah.
Yeah.
But probably only if iRacing get Lamborghinis.
I'll take it. That's great. So, speaking of kinetic, we like to spend a little bit of time talking about our team. So, if you can just kind of put that team owner hat on, tell us a little bit about your take on how the team is. Are we ready for Eldora?
I think we're as ready as we're going to get. Like Riley said, we're half and half. There's a few guys that are pumped for the race, and there's a few guys that just want to get it over and done with. And it really didn't help this week that the chief whiner about the Eldora race was the team manager. I hated it with a passion, and all you guys knew about it, and I whined at every possible opportunity. So I haven't helped the situation at all this week. But we're looking okay. You and Liam have qualified pretty decently. Scott is right on the bubble, but based on what's been going on in this qualifying session, Scott may well just scrape into the top split, and you just don't know once the racing starts. You just don't know what's gonna happen. In international, the person in kinetic that was struggling the most in international was Jake, and he by far got the best result of any of us. So it's a bit random. If you get a lucky break in your heat, get straight into the main, and then run carefully in the main. It doesn't matter how fast you are, you can get a decent result. So We'll see.
So we've talked
You
before
want to go
about
back to you want to go back to Le Mans now?
yeah, absolutely.
I didn't mean to divert us completely. I thought you were just going to ask Riley questions about Eldora and then go back to Le Mans. But so let's talk about that.
Sure.
So last year we ran a Le Mans 24, and we ran it at the right the right time slot, basically, because iRacing delayed theirs. But this year we're going to run it as an end of year event. It's pretty much going to be the same as last year. So three classes: LMP1, LMP2, and GTE. The I can't remember the exact date. I think it's the 8th of December, 8th and 9th of December. For basically the second weekend of December, and we're going to start it a little bit earlier than we did last year. Let me just drag up the document so I can make sure I've got the right information. So it's the 7th and 8th of December, and we're starting the race this year at 1700 GMT on the 7th, which is Saturday. So it will finish early hours of Monday morning for the Aussies, but not too bad. Probably doable. Last year I think it was a Friday night start for you guys in America, but we'll rotate the schedule every year by 8 hours or so. Just everyone shares a little bit of the pain. Okay, so 3 classes: LMP1, LMP2, LMP3. The LMP1s basically is restricted to the top teams in the driver's stand and in the 3 regions. So the top 2 teams in each region get an automatic invite, and then the next best 9 teams, irrespective of the region, will get an invite as well. So maximum of 15 LMP1s. If some teams turn down their invite, we might invite other people, but it's organizers' choice. It depends on whether we think that the teams are capable of running a car well. But hopefully we'll have 12 or so at least LMP1s, and they should all be pretty competitive, much more so than last year. So the LMP1s are restricted to the teams that qualify and their junior teams, and everyone must be a season pass holder, and everyone in those teams must also have raced, I think, 3 times. We didn't have that restriction last year. So what happened is a few people added people in at the last moment just for Le Mans and bought them a season pass. But we fixed that loophole for this year. So people are going to have to have raced for the team, which I think is much fairer. Okay, and then the other 2 classes, any season pass holder from any team. So you can make up your own teams. You can mix up teams from different regions, whatever you like. It's only the LMP1s which are restricted. There again, it's only going to be season pass holders, but we've also made a provision for people to buy a car season pass if you like, and add up to 3 places, I think, for $10. But you have to have at least one proper season pass holder in the car. Okay, so what else is notable?
So one of the things that's always a hot topic on iRacing forums around endurance events is incident. Anything you can share with that around our Le Mans 24?
Yeah, so what we did last year is we didn't have a hard incident cap, I think, or maybe we did. We did. We had 150 incidents as a hard cap. This year we've reduced that to 100, which sounds tough, but actually, if you look at the results from last year, I think only 1 car went above 100 incident points, and that was a car that Mike Ouellette drove. So we'll just have to ban Mike from the race this year, and we'll be good. But you don't get incidents at Le Mans. Mostly you get cut corners, and they don't count as incidents. So I think we'll be fine. What we will do, like we did last year, is that we'll have penalties at certain points of that count. So I think I've said at 50 and 100 you get stop and goes. What we haven't sorted out yet is the process for doing that. Last year it was basically self-policed by the teams, and then they sent a message to race control to say that they've done their stop and go, and that sort of worked okay. The problem was that only Wayne Hutchison was getting those messages. So Mike and I, who were also watching for this stuff, weren't getting those messages. So we had a little bit of a comms issue. So we'll have to think about how we do it. I'd like to automate it in some way or another, but whether we'll be able to or not is another matter.
Sure. So what about caution periods then?
Yeah, same deal. I'd sort of like to have cautions, but the problem for all of us that do some of the other leagues, and the one that everyone uses as an example is DGFX, is caution periods with multi-class racing are complicated, seriously complicated, and the standard iRacing process doesn't work. So most of the leagues that have cautions have got a manual process for dealing with the multi-classes, and it makes the caution period so long, and I hate it. And I'm also of the school that thinks that when any kind of caution period, you're going to have winners and losers, and you can try and make it as fair as possible, but basically, as soon as you put a caution out, someone is going to lose time and someone is going to gain time. So my personal view is, if we have cautions, we will just use the standard iRacing process. Now, the problem with that is that if you've got the overall leader between a class leader and second in class, the class leader in the class leader of the slower class is basically going to gain a lap, which is a bummer. So we could split up the racing for classes, but if people really want to have cautions, I think that's the only way of doing it. I don't want to have a 5 or 6 lap caution period at Le Mans. It will take half an hour for starters.
Right, for sure.
And we'd have to have 5 admins live to do all of the wave rounds and the end of lines and whatever else. So we'll see. We've definitely got a way. Throwing the cautions are no problem. We can do it at we can do it either at a random time, or we can use VAPEX have got a little utility that counts the total number of incidents, and they set it to give a warning message at X number of incidents, and then the admin throws a caution. So we can throw the cautions easily enough. It's the process of dealing with them that I haven't sorted out yet how to do it. And I'd rather have no cautions at all, which is what we did last year, than to have a really, really complicated process, because I think everyone would just get super confused and would be frustrated as well.
Yeah.
If you watch the DGFX series, the first caution in the first race is always utter chaos. Like, no one knows what they're supposed to do, and half the people pit when they're not supposed to, and even the organizers get confused sometimes, and I don't want that to happen in our race.
So moving on to other things that you do within the committee, you handle the support series. Is there anything you can share about next year?
sort of. So the support series is going to be the main support series is going to be pretty much exactly as it is now. So we changed in the middle of the year to run in exactly the same car and track combos as the main event, and we've also changed the process so that people's laps in those races count towards their practice laps, which seems to have been really popular. So we'll continue that next year. So the schedule for the support races will be exactly the same as the schedule for the main event when we've decided, of course, but a week earlier, and we'll continue with fixed sets as well. So the sort of the primary support series will stay the same. One thing that a couple of things that we're debating at the moment is we would really like to run some kind of team support series. So some relatively short endurance races, 3-4 hours, something like that. The problem with that is that we probably haven't got enough people to do it regionally, so we probably just have to do one in the Americas time zone, probably midweek. So one evening during the week before the main event. And I'd also, if we do it, I'd also like to restrict it to mainly sportsman drivers. So have it as something that people can use as their first experience for team racing. So maybe have it like a pro-am series where you can have one pro driver in a team and two sportsmen or something like that. So that's one option we're discussing. And this whole week and the low turnout for Eldora has kicked off the conversation within the committee again about should we have a dirt event every year, or should we rotate it, or should we take it out of the main series completely and run like a mini series of dirt or something like that. So there might be we might use a kind of support series to fulfill some of the weirder events that we currently have on the schedule, and make the main event still fairly diverse, but a bit more core than it is at the moment.
Great. So we have about 8 minutes left of qualifying. I don't expect any more people to show up, but maybe we just talk a little bit about Kinetic. What we've talked in the past about Kinetic not just being a majors team. Yes, we're a lot of the people that are on our team are in the majors, not all of them. What else is going on? I'm sure DGFX is starting to heat up.
Yeah, so we've always had a huge commitment to DGFX as well. We ran, I think we've run in DGFX since its first season, and we've been super successful. Mark and Matthias have won the championship 3 years in a row now, which is pretty amazing. And they did it in 3 different classes as well. They did it with GT3 the first year, then with GTE the next year, and then they moved up to LMP1 and won it again. So we got a big commitment there, and we're going to have DGFX have got a restriction on the number of cars a team can enter. So we've got 3 kinetic cars, but we had so much interest within the team that we've created another team, which is going to be called Energy, and they've entered 3 cars as well. So there's basically going to be 6 kinetic cars, but 3 of them will look one way and 3 of them will look slightly different, probably just a different color and a different logo. But yeah, it's a huge commitment. So 6 cars, 3 drivers in each car. That's 18 drivers that are signed up to DGFX. So it'll be interesting.
And they have a qualifying race, basically, is how they set their league. That's coming up here in a week or 2. Is that right?
I can't remember exactly when it is, and I guess I should find out, because I think I'm going to be driving in it. But yeah, so they've got way more entries than they want to run. So there's going to be like a pre-qualifying race, but it's a bit weird because I think it's their choices of people after the event are based on a bit of performance and a bit of cleanness and racecraft and whatever. So I, it's it's a bit vague on how to qualify. So I think probably the cars that are going to be called kinetic are pretty safe, and certainly Mark and Mateus are pre-qualified with their car, and the other two cars are fairly safe. The three cars that are going to be called energy, they're going to be that's going to be a little bit more difficult, and we've got one in each of the classes. So we've got a LMP2 and a GTE and one in Pro-Am, which is the Audi GT3. And all three of those cars are going to be, sweating whether they qualify or not. So we'll see.
Now, the team ran in Neo last year as well. Do we have any plans around that?
I think so. We ran a car in the complete series, and Mark and Mateus also qualified for the Neo 24 and did really well in that. So I think the guys want to run this year, but we'll see, because running in both DGFX and Neo is actually pretty difficult. And half of the guys that are doing that would be considering that are also running in the majors for us. So their schedule is going to be crazy if they try to do both. So I think the answer is we'd like to, but whether we're capable of doing it properly, and we wouldn't want to do it half-assed. We'd if we run Neo, we want to run it seriously. So we'll it's undecided yet. We'd like to, but maybe not.
Sure, and we've got guys doing Audubon as well, right?
Yeah, although that's dropping off. I think we had 4 or 5 guys doing it initially, but again, it's a tough series, and it takes a lot of commitment to do it well. And I think a couple of people have dropped out. I think only Scott and Lyndon are still running it properly, and everyone else is sort of half doing it and doing selected rounds.
Sure, so that's all kind of the league stuff we do. We do a lot. We put a lot of cars in the special events. Can you go into a little bit of the effort around trying to organize 4 or 5 cars with 4 or 5 guys in it at the same for one event?
Yeah, so I wrote some articles on the majors website last year about herding cats, and really that's where I came up with that term, was trying to organize cars for the special events. It's actually become a little bit easier in Kinetic now, because we've effectively got 2 groups of people. We've got the real fast guys that basically Mark Torres organizes for me. And they're typically 2 or 3 cars in events, and then we've got everybody else which I organize, and we have 2-3 cars in that as well. So often we've got 6 cars. I think we ran 6 at Le Mans, which was a huge effort, but it's not too bad. They're only once every 6 weeks or so on average. And we've got a pretty good and well drawn out process that we go through to get things organized. So it's not too bad.
Yeah, we certainly have honed how to put those teams together and how to put those cars together. It certainly seems like every round or every event we do, we get a little bit on to the next one.
It's definitely, we've been running the endurance races from the start. Blackadder was in the very, very first Spa 24 that was run on iRacing, and we've pretty much done every single one so far. So it's cool. And we have capacity to change things and to make last minute adjustments. Like one thing of interest for the majors guys is Brian Bennett from Alliance ran with us at Spa, which was awesome. Brian sent me a PM like 3 or 4 days before Spa, and said, "Hey John, if you need a driver for Spa, I'm available." And just by coincidence, we did. Um, so Brian drove with us in one of our cars, and it was awesome to have him around. We've all raced with Brian a lot, and we although we like we like to talk up the rivalry between Kinetic and Alliance, but a lot of us are friends, so it was really really cool.
Yeah, I know when you reached out to me to say, "Hey, let's put his name on the car," it was a what? But it made sense. Frenemies more than enemies for sure. So it was cool.
Yeah, I think if you asked all the people in both teams, there'd be people on the other team that you know they wouldn't particularly want to be driving a team race with. But Brian is really cool, and we've all raced with him a lot, and
Yeah, for sure.
it was no problem.
Well, it looks like last chance qualifying is in the books. It's time to go set the grids. So I want to thank John King for wearing the competition committee hat and a little bit of kinetic hat at the same time, and a big thanks to Riley Thompson from Total Downforce Racing for joining us and sharing the story of their team and their outlook. And wish everybody good luck in the races tomorrow, and we will see you at Michigan.
Cool.